A SolarWinds supply chain attack. That was a big one. 18,000 high-profile companies were affected, including the US government, several Fortune 500 companies that got malware installed, and they couldn't really do anything about it. At least that's what I hear from Rob Maas, because he initially refused to participate in this threat talk because he is here to tell us how we can solve this. So it's going to be an interesting one. So I welcome you to this deep dive on this subject. And from the SOC floor here at Onto It, I welcome you to Threat Talks, the deep dive. Today's subject is SolarWinds.
Welcome to Threat Talks. Let's delve deep into the dynamic world of cybersecurity.
So let me briefly introduce our guest. I already briefly introduced Rob a little bit. He is our field CTO, and his day job is to make sure that our customers can defend themselves against attacks that we're talking about today. Welcome, Rob. And Luca Cipriano, he is one of our A-class nerds that actually can really well explain how these very difficult things work. And today we're going to really deep dive. So it's going to be technical at times, but we'll also explain to you about what it all means and what you can do against this. First of all, Luca, we are talking about SolarWinds Orion. That's the product. What does it do in the first place? What kind of product is this?
Yeah, so we refer to this attack, or people refer to this attack as the SolarWinds supply chain attack, but it affected actually the Orion IT monitoring and management software. That is basically one of the software that SolarWinds produce, and it's used to manage IT infrastructures for companies. You can merge on-premises and also cloud, so you have one point to control everything.
Yeah, so you kind of need this if you want to effectively manage endpoints,
yes,
laptops, all that stuff.
Everything, all your IT infrastructure.
Including the security of those, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Monitoring.
Supply chain attacks. We discussed this in our regular threat talk, our extensive one. And we distinguished three different supply chain attacks there. Can you briefly explain the three and which one we're talking about today?
Yeah. So basically a supply chain attack is when a third party is involved in the attack, so you're not hitting or targeting a customer directly or a victim. In this case, the SolarWinds is because the attacker attacked a third party directly, implemented bad code. We'll discuss that in a bit. The other options are basically a vulnerability in a library, which we also discussed, or that you trust your data to someone else and then they basically are not careful with it and they leak it. So those are the three that we discussed in the previous topic.
Yeah, and the last one is the one you commonly think of if you're talking about supply chain. You trust your data to someone else.
That's the most common one, and also user mistakes, of course, there, that they simply, for example, send an email with all the data to multiple people or the wrong people.
Yep. But in this case, it's about a company, SolarWinds in this case, that got hacked. They produced some kind of new update.
This is a really sophisticated one, and from my perspective, really hard to defend against it. At least for the first steps, it's really hard. Yeah.
We'll see if we still can come up with a few defenses. So, Luca, apparently, it all starts with the supplier as a victim. You can do nothing against it, basically. I mean, how did they get in?
Yeah, well, so first of all, they had to get in the supplier, as you mentioned. It seems like they probably got initial foothold by using a previously compromised Microsoft Office 365 account. Not really 100% sure how they did it, but that's how they actually gained initial foothold.
There can be many. It doesn't really matter for this particular attack, maybe, but they somehow got it.
Yeah,
but then they changed. They basically released an update of the software of SolarWinds. So and that's difficult, right? I mean,
basically they managed to add malicious code to one of the libraries, a legitimate DLL, which is called SolarWinds Orion Core Business Layer, and they managed to add their malicious code in that one.
Yeah, so they took the actual one, updated it at home, basically, and then somehow got it into the chain. But isn't there like signing stuff and all that? I mean,
the thing is, like, as we mentioned before, this attack is really sophisticated. So, the US attributed this to a Russian APT. We already heard about them in a previous threat talk, as like a Cozy Bear,
the Outlook
one. Yes, exactly. So they attributed it to them, and when there's like state actors, is always they have time and money enough to basically do something. How they manage to do that is because they use various hashing algorithm, and basically the DLL that they use is a .NET assembly that contains legitimate namespace, classes, and methods that are used in the Orion framework. So it's blended in with legitimate code.
Yeah, so it looked really legitimate to the CI/CD pipeline of SolarWinds.
Yes. Yeah.
My understanding is that we don't know everything about this, huh?
No, that's not really, sure, 100%, but that's basically how they managed to make it look like legitimate.
Yeah. So then they sign the update, publish it.
Yes,
and then Rob tells everybody, go update all your patches.
This patch gets your update.
And in this case, if you update, indeed, you get affected. So
don't update. No, I'm just
don't
kidding.
update.
Yeah.
And then, then I am a customer. In this case of SolarWinds. And by the way, it's not to bash SolarWinds in any way. I mean, this
could happen to anybody. Like, I mean, it can happen to any customer. But what is really interesting is, as I mentioned, it's a really sophisticated attack, and how the malware, basically works. It's really interesting. So basically, what the authors did, they put in the code a lot of checks in place. So one of these checks, for example, was before running the malicious code, it was to basically check which was the process that's called the library. So that has to be the Orion legitimate process. And basically they did some validations as well. Like, for example, before running the malicious code, the library should have been present in the system between 12 or 14 days prior. So in this way, it's more sneaky because it doesn't run immediately, but it stays dormant for a long time.
So to get that straight, so the malicious code, there was this library that they injected that basically had like preconditions in order to become effective. One is that Orion itself actually called it. So that must have been tricky, for example, for researchers to figure it out.
Yes, indeed, because it evades sandboxes or some kind of analysis. It depends on which process is calling it. So that is one. But it's not only that, because there's more. What they did also, they included like a list of hashed processes, drivers, and that were tied to legitimate forensic softwares or EDR software. And basically, what it was doing, it was checking first if any of this process, driver, or service was running, and if it found a match, it was trying to disable it by modifying the registry key. And it tried to do this by querying all the users in the system, trying to find a local admin user, and then changing the ownership of the registry key that needed to be modified to that admin user, and then modified to effectively bypass the defense mechanism. So
before it even would try to do harm,
yes, it would
first check if it had the risk of. Okay.
Yes, and also one of the thing is like that. It was basically running as part of the Orion Improvement business layer, which is basically a class that runs threads which run contemporary. So at the same time as the legitimate process, so it does not create any interruption. So basically the malicious code runs at the same time as the legitimate code, and it does not interfere with each other. So that is also an extra part. It would not crash anything, so you don't really see it.
So it seems that its intention of this malware is to stay forever installed on all systems.
To stay there and be silent and just blend in with the system, not being noticed. And to do that, basically, of course, it needs to establish C2 connection with the command and control server, and how it did that with a HTTP backdoor. And basically, in order to communicate with the C2 server, basically the malicious code was gonna send a response to the C2 server using JSON, which is how SolarWinds communicates normally. So also the format was like the legitimate one, and then the command and control server will send the commands back, encoded commands that then they were decoded by the backdoor using regex. So it had a set of commands that could basically run, that are recognized. And one of those, for example, was used to install additional malware in this case, and then run them. So download them and run them.
So far, it sounds like a digital version of a spy, as only Hollywood can depict it in a movie.
Yeah, basically, yes. Yeah, indeed.
Okay. So and all this sophisticated malware components, all these run in all those 18,000 companies times this amount of endpoints that SolarWinds agent was running on.
Because basically, as you know, like when you have a software, they release patches, and they're releasing a patch, but they're patching you in a bad way. So it contains this library that has this backdoor.
So it's like a super spy then.
But yeah, basically at the moment where you're patching and you're installing your updates, what happens is that you get a RAT installed, so a Remote Access Trojan on your system, which, by the way, this one was called Sunburst, with SolarWinds Sunburst, the name. So and then basically they are inside your network, the attackers.
So how can we begin to unravel how they abuse this malware? I mean, 18,000 companies, organizations, and it's very sophisticated. So can we even scratch the surface of how they use it in a bad way, the attackers? You think? Do we know stuff about that?
Yes. Well, I mean, we know, of course, that accessing your network is just the first step for an attacker. So then from there, they're going to start with lateral movements and start to do their dirty deeds.
Wait. So Rob, he mentioned lateral movement. So far, I mean, you've been silent. So there's probably there's no way to get around all these things, probably, or is there?
No, so far basically hope was our strategy that we did it to get affected by. No, it doesn't work. But we did it. We could do nothing because it was SolarWinds basically that got breached, and then the updates got infected, and we basically say, I want your update, so come in.
But isn't there like heuristics that if you see the binary of the SolarWinds and XDR solutions, for example, can't they see this?
So once the malware, basically in this case, the update is installed and the malware is starting to run, then EDR tools are there to detect behavior analytics and see, hey, this is strange behavior. I should kill or stop this process. Like Luca mentioned, in this case, the malware was trying to stop or kill the EDR process or the XDR process, so that the endpoint could not detect this process. This is also a reason why you should not solely rely on your endpoint detection and response solution, because that's your last resort. If that fails, then the process can run. So you should also have multiple measures in place. And in this case, then we come back to the zero trust strategy. So make sure to segment the network, make very strict policies, so it makes it difficult. So lateral movement is very limited and only allowed to the places where this system end user has access to. In this way, we cannot completely mitigate the attack, but at least we can limit the impact. And also for example, outgoing connections. Why should servers especially have outgoing connections despite from going to SolarWinds servers? So if this command and control server is trying to be reached, then we can easily block that. That's not that hard. Maybe it's harder for clients, the endpoints for the...
Yeah, because the malware itself, Luca mentioned that it is actually going to beacon in to a command and control server. And if why would you allow? Why would you make an allow rule for command and control traffic in your firewall?
Well, that you're not going to make specific that, but the thing is like that they used dynamically generated algorithm for the URLs for the C2. So it's also a bit complex because there is not simply you block that. Well, you should know really good what it should communicate.
Yeah, but there are solutions now to detect DGR algorithms, DNS security like Umbrella from Cisco or Palo Alto DNS security. So there are solutions that can detect and help you prevent this.
Yes.
So what they do, they just simply figure out when the domain was registered.
They basically look at, so the DGA is basically generating a lot of domains and only one is valid. So, and then basically what you do is you are going to check every DNS request and then basically say, oh, this looks like a pattern. So it looks like a DGA algorithm, and then stop the process. That's in essence what's happening. Yeah.
Listening in on the traffic that all your endpoints are doing towards the DNS server, basically.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And Okay. So lateral movement. You said that's to get to.
So once they were in the network, according to Microsoft, they mentioned that in some of the attacks, basically the attacker it managed to acquire the SAML token sign-in certificate, which is basically it's the certificate that contains the pair of keys that are used to validate the integrity of tokens used for communication between federated network, for example. So basically, thanks to this, they managed to get privilege and trust, and basically get, like, for example, email access to private data, and
basically act as the system administrator.
Yes. Basically, it depends on what you steal, but basically, that's the thing. And the most sophisticated thing is also that they had a plan on how to exfiltrate the data as well. And, like, for example, things such as
we're now at the very last stage, so I hope we can catch them. We'll ask Rob in a minute.
Maybe. I hope so. But, like, for example, they stored reconnaissance results or data inside legitimate plugin configuration files, and then they masqueraded and they camouflaged the exfiltration traffic as the Orion Improvement Program protocol, which is basically the protocol that sends telemetry data for improvement. So basically, you think it's telemetry data that should go outside, but that's not the case.
It doesn't go to SolarWinds then, but
no, it does not go. Of course not. It goes to the malicious one, to the C2 server or the attacker.
Yeah. So in this case,
was just camouflaged as.
So this is. Should be easy to detect
yes.
and block if you have specific policies again. If you have clients that are allowed to access everything, then this is really hard to detect and block.
Yeah.
Although you can have some block list in place, but they're always a bit late to the game, basically. So you should turn it around and say, okay, this is the only thing that's allowed. You can go to SolarWinds server or to this specific upstream server. I need to do my business process, but don't allow all locations.
Sadly, I've seen a lot of companies that also allow everything outside from edge devices that, for example, check VPN, and that should never happen, because why do you want that device to communicate freely outside with everything? That's something that should not happen.
Was this the main thing that was the culprit, basically, for customers who actually got damaged from this?
Could this have helped? It could help, but I'm pretty sure that if that is the case, there are other ways to exfiltrate data. You can use DNS. Well, then good luck putting something in place.
Really hard.
Because, that's they wouldn't stop. It's something that if you're a motivated attacker, that's not gonna stop you. You will find something.
And especially some other ways. If it is a targeted attack to a specific company, then it's really hard to detect and stop.
Yes.
Do we even know how long this attack has been going on before it was detected and solved?
I think it went for a few months already, if I'm not mistaken. It was detected. It started in December 2020, but the first detection, I don't remember. I think I have some notes probably to check that, but
so months at least.
It was months.
Luckily, not years. Then it's not like a real long-term sleeper spy. Then
no. Well, it was detected after months.
So, but if we would be in control of our outbound flows, wouldn't that make a ton of difference? I mean, we know from experience that many organizations are not in control of their servers. Indeed, like you mentioned, go outside. Far too many allow rules or implicit allow rules within your organization.
We have discussed this before. A lot of companies basically started from, hey, the danger or the bad guys are outside, so mainly on the internet, and they make rules on, hey, from the internet nothing can come in. And most attacks nowadays basically try to compromise a system that's within the network and then start the communication from within the network to outside. So they basically flip the coin. And a lot of companies then still have rules that says, okay, anything is allowed.
Or don't have a point of control within the data center.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so if you go even
allow rule, if you
if you go even further, indeed, you want to segment the network, make very specific policies. It all comes back basically to the same strategy over and over again, and then you can maybe not completely prevent this attack, but you can at least lower the impact or at least stop the data exfiltration.
Yeah, well, that's the key point.
That's
stop the data exfiltration.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Okay, so not really 100%. Compromise then again. There's a lot we can do actually, and we should.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for all these insights and these very insight into how hackers work and what kind of crazy things they can do. We learned a lot today. Thank you for our listeners. Thank you for tuning in. And if you like this video, please like it, subscribe to our channel, because that means that you'll get a notification next week when our next one is there. Every week we'll ship an episode. Once per month, this will be a larger episode about a topic which is a more high level and more business level talk, basically. And this one was a very technical one at times. But that's the cadence that you can get from us. If you want to know more about this particular attack, we also prepared really great infographics for you that you can use to search further, to get more details on the attack if you want to know even more. And also, if you want to make a presentation about this internally, you can actually use your free to use them for education within your company. If you want to do that, go to threat-talks.com. All our episodes are on there. All the collateral is on there for you to use. And please, if you have some feedback for us, if you want to know more about a certain subject, don't hesitate to contact us. You can reach us at team@threat-talks.com or leave something in the comments for us. And that leaves me from the Security Operations Center floor here at Ontoit to thank you once again and hope to see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Threat Talks, a podcast by Ontoit Cybersecurity and AMS-IX. Did you like what you heard? Do you want to learn more? Follow Threat Talks to stay up to date on the topic of cybersecurity.